They My sincere apologies for running a minute late here for the Operations Committee meeting. This is Commissioner Andrew Coy joining and looking to see who else we have. I see Vice Chair Parker is on the call. Do I have other, Commissioner Mohammed, I see you're on the call. Are there any other commissioners, Dr. Judkins, that we're anticipating for the call today?
I'm checking, but I don't believe so.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get underway. This is Committee Chair Andrew Coy. I'd like to welcome you all to the May 20th, 2025 Operations Committee meeting. If you're not done so, please mute your phone. Anyone who does not mute their phone may be muted by the call moderator or removed from the call. Additionally, please turn your video off if you are not a board member or the CEO and our staff. I'll now read a roll call to the board to identify who is present. Please identify yourself first before speaking for the record. Vice Chair Parker.
Vice Chair Parker present.
Commissioner Ames Messenger. Commissioner Mohammed. Commissioner Mohammed.
Sorry, I was on mute. Mohammed present.
Welcome. Members of the public who would like to provide comment to this committee can do so by signing up the day of the meeting until the start of the meeting at 10:30 a.m. Up to 5 individuals will be given the opportunity to provide comment to the Operations Committee. Speakers will be granted 3 minutes. All public comments should address operations-related issues. Individuals or groups interested in providing comment to the committee may sign up one of 3 ways. Email public.comment@bcps.k12.md.us or call the board office at 443-642-4095 or visit the board office at the Alice G. Pender Hughes Building, 200 East North Avenue, room 406. Finally, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering feedback or answering questions from the public. If you do have questions, though, or feedback, please email the school board at schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us, and board office staff will provide a response to you. We'll now get underway with the items on the agenda, and believe we have a few compliance reports this morning that we'll be reviewing. And so I'm just pulling up on my side the first one, but if we have the first one ready to go, happy to turn it over to you all. The capital review projects presentation.
Yes, good morning. My name is Maureen Gershberg. It's not a policy, but yes.
A compliance report, sorry, compliance report, if I didn't say that. That's the section that it's in anyway.
Okay, I don't have a compliance report. I have the capital projects and the CEFMP.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Please proceed. Apologies.
Okay, yes. All right, I'll bring it up. We'll start with the capital projects review. Okay. All right, can folks see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry. Good morning. My name is Maureen Gershberg. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Strategy for Baltimore City Public Schools. And today we are presenting the update on the capital projects review. This aligns with Board Priority 3. These are the topics that we'll be covering. And just a reminder, we take the CIP along with all the other capital projects to the board each year in the fall. However, specifically because the capital improvement program CIP funding isn't set until the following spring because it's dependent upon the state budget, we always do an update to the board in spring on how that ended up, how the projects were allocated once that decision is set at the state level. So today is just an update to the board. And then as you'll see later in the presentation, we'll go over the schedule of how the cycle repeats itself in the fall. We always like to set the stage, reminding folks that we are very under budgeted. The current maintenance and capital budget is approximately $375 million less than what is needed when you look at a portfolio of our size. And this means that we have very difficult decisions to make given the need and the limited funding. Another flag that we'll be discussing is the decreased Healthy Schools Facility Fund, which is has been a pretty crucial pot of money that's helped us keep up with some of our systemic projects. Just as part of the larger conversations happening at the state level, that pot of money is slated to decrease. So we'll talk about that as well. Capital decisions are informed by both physical system conditions and district priorities. Physical systems, examples of that would be inspections, preventative maintenance reports, facilities condition indexes, work orders, and life cycle information. District priorities, which also help guide capital decisions, are come from our annual review. They come from analysis within our CEFMP, and then also from our the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan, and also our CMP, Comprehensive Maintenance Plan. These are the current funding sources that feed into our capital program. The reoccurring ones are highlighted in blue and yellow, but sorry, blue and green. The CIP is has been around 25 million. And we anticipate that it's not going to be increasing that much going forward. This year was 26. The Healthy School Facility Funds has historically been 45 million, but as we'll get into later, that is slated to decrease as well. And then our local funding from Baltimore City was at 27.5 million this year. The other sources listed on here are one-time pots of money. And so while they are really helpful in helping move the needle in terms of the amount of renovated and new space, they've already been allocated. So it's not like we can keep saying that that's going to keep impacting us moving forward. This is the timeline I mentioned. So each fall, we put in the requests for our CIP projects, and those the amount of funding allocated towards that is decided over the winter, and it's then finalized in spring and summer. So as I mentioned, we got about 26 million in CIP funds this year. Healthy Schools Facility Funds, we'll be submitting that this summer, and then that'll be likely approved in the fall. The CIP versus Healthy Schools, they're different pots of money. They have different requirements, different caveats. For example, the CIP pot of money has focused more on our major projects. It does have a utilization stipulation. We cannot use CIP funds for buildings that are less than 60% utilized. Healthy Schools does not have that caveat, but Healthy Schools has specific projects that you can use those projects for. And so we're constantly having to look at both funding sources, see what is applicable, see what wasn't approved, and then maybe shifting it over to Healthy Schools. It's complicated, but we are, again, always looking at what the projects are and how they might be, which bucket they might fit into. As you can see here, we've received significant funds from the Healthy Schools Fund over the past several years, and so that's been just really important in helping maintain our systemic project, or meeting our systemic project needs, though it's not enough. But going forward, it's going to be less funding. There's currently 90 million in the state budget for Healthy Schools up through FY26, and Baltimore City was guaranteed half of that. Going forward, they're renaming the pot of money to be the Nancy Kopp Fund, and we are also not guaranteed 50% of that fund. That fund is also, I believe, about 70 million. And so the overall pot of money is smaller, and we're not guaranteed a set percentage. So it's a little bit of a question mark how much we will be receiving from that pot of money going forward. This is a summary of our capital projects underway between CIP and Healthy Schools. And these were the FY26 CIP requests. Like we always do, we submitted more projects than what we knew we were going to get funding for because the need is there. We received funding for 3 projects, and they were projects that had received prior funding, and the state is required to fulfill that commitment. For Healthy Schools, we submitted 5 projects, and the 5 were approved. This is a summary of all our projects. The systemic project counts by funding program are shown for each quadrant. So it's there's a lot going on, but we have, again, these various pots of money, and we also have these different, it's different between like a systemic project and major project. As of June 1st, 2024, all classrooms in the district had some form of AC. The picture you see here is a vertical package unit completed at Reginald F. Lewis. And the VPUs have been great. They've helped us meet that goal of getting AC in the classroom, but we want to note that this is not the long-term solution. This is a very nice Band-Aid, but in the ideal world, all of our buildings would have full HVAC systems. But those are quite pricey. Looking forward for our systemic projects, we anticipate submitting 4 to 5 Healthy School projects this summer. Project costs have been going up, so we'll see what the final number is. And then tentatively 35 CIP systemic projects for the FY27 CIP. And those right now are just carryover from the FY26 systemic projects that were not funded. We'll be reevaluating those this summer to kind of see if that list is still where we are, dependent upon updated system information and overall district needs. Looking forward for major projects, here's a list of the different items coming online, and I'll actually walk through slides for each of these projects as well. The bottom ones, you'll be seeing those as well, but just please note the Ben Franklin and Lakeland and Edmondson and the other Ben Franklin projects, they have not received funding yet, but they are in our long-term plan. This is our long-term plan. It takes many years for us to be able to fund our major projects. At the top in the blue, you'll see the projects that have received prior funding, and we need to finish those out to be able to complete the projects. On here is a mix of CIP and Build to Learn. At the bottom, this is the proposed funding that we have not been allocated yet. The state, we've been talking with the state, and they agree that the need is there, I think for most of these, but they have not guaranteed the funding just because we anticipate it's only about 25 million each year. And again, that need outweighs what is available. We often get questions on such as, oh, well, my building needs to be renovated. Well, my building needs to be renovated. And it's like, yes, we know a lot of buildings need to be renovated, but as you can see from here, even based on our current plans, we're not going to have funds available to add a new building to this list for CIP until FY 34, 35. And then even in FY 33 is when we're finally able to put CIP money back into those systemic projects, which is absolutely needed, especially if that new form of Healthy Schools is going to be less. And so we do have to keep in mind the long-term plan when we talk about major projects and how we move forward as a district with our limited funding. And then happy news, Furley Elementary ribbon cutting is June 4th at 11 a.m. I hope folks can make it. And now we're just going to talk about the major projects and their openings. As I said, Furley is opening this summer, June. The Marie G. Faring Annex, it's a church with an addition on it that will serve early learners. That's going to be opening in August. They have a second project. It's a 2-story prefab building that's going to be coming online January 2026. And so we'll do a full ribbon cutting in January once both buildings are finished. The Northeast building, which will house Vanguard Middle, is coming online, is slated for August 2026. They are currently in the Thurgood Marshall building. The Frederick Douglass campus is slated to open August 2026, and that's going to be a co-location with Joseph Briscoe and Frederick Douglass. Commodore John Rogers is currently in swing at the Southeast Middle building, in Southeast Baltimore, and their building is slated to come online January 27. Armistead Gardens is a phased on-site renovation addition, so the students don't have to go off-site, but the project will not be completed until August 27. City College, they swing into their swing space this summer. They'll be there for 3 years at the University of Baltimore, and then they move back to their renovated facility August 28. The City Springs, the brand new building, which will be replacing the current Lombard building, is slated to open August 28. Western and Poly, both of those schools will be swinging at the Northwestern building. Western is 26 through 28. Poly will be 28 through 30. And so the renovated Western side will open in 2028, and then the renovated Poly side will open in 2030. Ben Franklin and Edmondson have yet to receive funds, but as I showed you in our long-term plan, they are included. That we have this past fall we changed the ask from a full renovation to more of a minor renovation. And then Ben Franklin is also, we're hoping to put a 2-story prefab modular on site to assist with the overcrowding that is happening there. So that's why you'll see the 2 dates for Ben Franklin. Other projects we included, another project that we included in the CIP this year that was not approved just due to limited funding was Lakeland. And so going forward, we're going to be requesting, again, a 2-story prefab facility for Lakeland to assist with overcrowding, which is tied to our Latino growth. And then as part of the annual review this past January, the board voted to keep the Southeast building in its portfolio to help serve the overcrowding occurring in the Southeast part of the city that is tied to the Latino growth. On the 10-year timeline of CIP funds, we have multiple years of funding for making improvements at the Southeast building. And so ideally, the program would come online in summer 2027, but we wouldn't be done funding the projects that need to happen there until 2031. And I know this is a little tiny, but we often get questions on, well, who's swinging where and when. So this is just a summary page showing where the various schools are swinging. So at the top, you can see the schools that are swinging at Northwestern. City College will be at UB. Commodore John Rogers is in the Southeast building. Furley is vacating the Thurgood building this summer, but then Vanguard will be there until summer 26. Armistead, Marie G. Faring, City Springs, none of them require swinging. And then Edmondson and Briscoe did not require swinging either. And if you want to know more, you should check out our dashboards.
Questions for my commissioners, fellow commissioners, and welcoming Commissioner Ames Messenger as well.
Sorry for my tardiness.
You're good. Any questions folks want to lift up here? I do have a couple, at least comments, questions, feedback. I'll start and then welcome any other commissioners that want to add. First off, I would just list or just lift up that this is certainly a tremendous lift that has been going on for so long. And as you point out, these are long tail projects that are planning forward for many years. Knowing that there's a meaningful number of new commissioners, and we are currently in the process of, I know there's additional commissioners that'll be joining in July, but I know the community panel and those folks are considering applicants. So anybody that's out there that wants to help share the word and have folks apply, please do so. But all that to say, there's a lot of commissioners that I don't know to what degree you all have met with and talked through in some of the onboarding process that this came up, or that there's been other places. I don't know if the public board meeting going into the full detail of what I'm envisioning here, but I do think, perhaps some more deep dive with different commissioners could be a really beneficial way for them to be able to ask a lot of questions. And I know this is an area that is of great interest, right? Especially as we think about utilization rates, as we think about the size of schools, the cost of schools. There's a lot of questions here that I can easily imagine and know there'll be different commissioners that would like to spend time really understanding and considering how this fits into the overall learning experience of our young people. So that's like one sort of, I guess, call out. And certainly, Vice Chair, I imagine we could, ahead of next Tuesday, sort of surface some of this and see what interest there is and whether or not it makes sense in the public to do a little bit deeper dive, or if you think it'd be better for commissioners to just engage more, I'll say individually, but in small group, right? Not a large group, obviously. The second thing that I also just want to lift up, similarly, you referenced the upcoming open house. Dr. Judkins, I would love to know how many of our commissioners have had the opportunity to be at a ribbon cutting. I know we have obviously had a number of ribbon cuttings over the past, decade. You all have done just such an amazing lift, but I do think it's a great experience. I've certainly been to one or two and would highly recommend it, to be able to go and see and tour and walk through with the architects, with the other officials that are there. But Dr. Judkins, just I think having some tracker where we just know if somebody has not had that opportunity, to maybe encourage them and to have the board have a presence to celebrate all of the work that goes into creating that learning space for our young people. And then my last point before I then open up to other questions is just reflecting on past 9 years, and I would love to see a steady drumbeat of insights or of accomplishments throughout the next year that are really just cataloging and documenting. You referenced obviously the air conditioning wall units, and while you're right that is not the most ideal of solutions, I do recall schools being closed in large numbers due to heat not that long ago, and seeing the progress that has been made to where learning spaces are appropriately air conditioned and heated, right? Is like you all have stretched dollars in ways that I think just should be celebrated, lifted up, cataloged and documented, and would love to see ways that you all are doing so, and then we as a board are helping to amplify that, and just showcasing how this team and you all have just done tremendous work, and the need is much greater, right? To your point, like it's there is more need, but you all have been very creative, determined, dogged, and successful in pretty important progress. I'll turn it over to other commissioners. Commissioner Mohammed, I see you're, and then Commissioner Ames Messenger.
Sure. So if I can start just with lens around ensuring that our projects and our building needs are tied to our enrollment growth and program expansion. I think it's extremely important right now, because if we look at this year, we see some growth. However, within our schools, I want to ensure that strategically we are prioritizing those areas where there's need, particularly because if we look at the loss of funds through HSFF, with those funds being reduced, how are we going to ensure that our CIP allocations actually we have a strategy to meet the areas where we currently have growth. So if you can speak towards that, that would be helpful. And then just understanding if in this work, do we have a rubric that really allows us to be able to see how we're prioritizing certain projects over others, knowing that we have a few projects in the line, and based on funding, many of those projects will not be completed on our timeline. So with that, how are we prioritizing some projects over others?
Yep, thank you for that question. So I want to go back to the 10-year timeline. A number of these are tied to that increased enrollment that you mentioned. So Furley, that was a twofold. There was increased enrollment, but there's also structural issues with the old building. Armistead Gardens, absolutely, Latino growth. Marie G. Faring, Latino growth. Let's see, if you go further down, like Lakeland, yep, growth from Latino population, and then Southeast building. We literally pulled a building from our surplus list to be able to house the overcrowding, specifically in the Rura, Graceland, and Hollibird zones. With the amount of overcrowding already happening there, like we could fill a school. So we are very much aware of where seats are needed and taking our limited funding to be able to address it strategically. Given that limited funding, in the ideal world, like Lakeland would not just be getting a 2-story prefab. They are fabulous, but in the ideal world, we could do a new building that had enough seats. We can't do that. So we are trying to make sure that we fit within those limited resources. Same with Ben Franklin. That was previously a full renovation that was going to cost, I think, over 160 million. We scaled down though, because we knew realistically the ISC was never going to approve or fund a project of that scale, given the queue that we have. So we have been strategic in how we can meet the needs of the growing population. At the same time, balancing it out with the existing buildings that maybe don't need additional seats, but still need those new roofs, those new windows, focusing Healthy Schools projects on those.
And if I'm clear, the Healthy Schools Fund is set to sunset FY26, correct?
It is. They're rebranding it. I don't know what you want to call it. They're calling it the Nancy Kopp Fund going forward. And so it'll serve a similar purpose as the Healthy Schools Fund, but instead of 90 million for the whole state, of which we got half, it'll be 70 million for the whole state, and we are not guaranteed half.
And what is our dependency on the Build to Learn Fund?
So Build to Learn has already been fully allocated. That is going to be serving Western, City, and Poly.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's it for me. Appreciate it.
All right, sorry. And also a little bit of Build to Learn was going to City Springs as well.
Thank you for those great questions and response. Appreciate it. Commissioner Ames Messenger.
Thank you. First of all, I am currently sitting in the Claremont Patterson parking garage or lot. So looking at your work, and I'm greatly appreciative, and just talking to the principal this morning at Claremont of the importance, and also I think just the strategic thought of moving some of our special day programs in to be co-located with other high schools. It's been a real joy this year to be able to see that and see just how those new spaces impact kids and staff and learning environments. So thank you for your work that I got to enjoy this morning. I think also looking, just a question in terms of going into the next year or two, and obviously you are very thoughtful and strategic about planning for overages, given the fact that just with federal policy, kind of what are the options in the event that we are looking at tariffs on the higher end of that, 50 to 140+%, kind of what are the contingency plans in the event that those costs come in on the higher end? Is that delaying? Are there ways to source and kind of avoid those costs now?
So I can answer that to the best of my ability. So when we are seeing higher prices, absolutely, hands down. Like the window projects for the most recent round of Healthy Schools is coming in over. And so we've been supplementing where we can, getting a little scrappy. Ultimately, if things continue to escalate, we'll have to make harder decisions on what has to move forward, what can be delayed. It's everything will, it pushes things out and it limits the amount that we can do. Because ultimately, even us being scrappy, there's going to be other offices that are having to deal with the same issue, unfortunately.
And so just to, I say, not to put too fine of a point, but that we could potentially looking at delaying some of these later projects in some of the high schools based on cost.
For the ones that have not received prior funding, correct. The ones that have
So our-
received funding, basically when the state signs off on it, they are committing to finish out that funding.
And so we're not like if the projects come in at above cost to federal or to tariffs or whatever other causes, the district is not liable for those increases. The state covers it.
We would be liable, but the state does cover significant, and like Build to Learn is covering such a high portion of it. It's not as if we'd be responsible for like 100 million. Not that it would be that high. Allison has her hand up.
No, you're doing beautifully, Maria. I just figured I'd also help. I mean, so for the ones that are already scheduled and planned and the swing space plans are already in place. So if Frederick Douglass, which is happening right now, Western and City, which are moving into swing space next year, and then Poly, which moves into swing space in 2028. It has been a consistent conversation about the fact that the prices are going up while frankly the bond market has often been going in the wrong direction, and those are bonds that Build to Learn lets. So we've several times closed that funding gap on those projects. So we've refinanced, we have made changes. So we ended up using some of the 21st century money to use Frederick Douglass. We went to the legislature. We got an additional amount of money that ended up being about $50 million that we're putting to close that gap. And then each year at the end of the year, if we have any resources left over, we've been kind of putting money away to keep closing that gap. So I think we're in good shape on those. We're still on time on schedule, like we're still on the planned schedule on we have updated that schedule. We delayed it a year, right, Maureen, at one point?
City College was delayed a year, but the 2028 is the current opening date.
Yeah, so we still feel on track for that. And we will continue at the end of this fiscal year too. We'll look to see if there's any left, if there's any resources we can continue to put away in the fund balance for these projects. These are really large projects. They're once a lifetime. And we're very committed to trying to make sure that we close them. We also, so these other ones that are further out, like Ben Franklin and Edmondson, those are the trickier ones that we've tried to, we did pare back a little bit in the design, as Maureen said, because of just the cost. During the 21st century, during the height of the 21st century initiative, city schools, in order to amplify what was happening with the 21st century money, which I just want to remind the board and the public that I think people think of that as if that we got a windfall with that piece of legislation. We did not. There's our bonds that we are paying for the next 30 years from the date of the final bond. The final bond is let, and I don't think the final bond has been let yet. So that 30-year period hasn't started yet, and we've been paying for 7 years or so, I think, Maureen, for those bonds, but it hasn't, the 30-year clock in terms of when that payment, that $20 million a year payment ends. So we've been paying for that. During that time, we also were using some of our CIP dollars to try to do schools to just kind of amplify that and to move that along. And we have been doing that, but in recent, as we're getting through Build to Learn, we've kind of realized that the need, as Maureen has clearly made the case for, is so far outstrips the resources that doing these larger larger complete renovations, we can only do, using the money we have, we can only really get about one school done every 5 years. And we, probably at this point, I don't know, have between, once 21st century is done, Maureen, between 80 and 100 schools that need to be still need to be renovated. And so at that clip, we're talking about 500 years or so before all of our schools get renovated. And so that's why we need to be thinking about, we are constantly thinking about there needs to be a different way that this gets fixed, because there's no, Maureen, Lynette, Cindy, Scott Washington, that team does an amazing job of effectively utilizing the resources we have to maintain our buildings, and it's gold out of straw. And we've also, and then Angela, her team and the board has done very thoughtful work in terms of reducing the size of the portfolio, closing 49 schools since 2012. So we've done our part, both paying for those bonds, closing schools to get to more of the right size, and using our resources as effectively as we possibly can. But this is not something we can manage our way out of. This is a larger societal problem that has to be solved because it has a long history of the way the city was organized and the reliance on property taxes across the country for capital funding. It's not something we can fix ourselves. We need help.
Just not to belabor the point, but so it's somewhat we're stuck in this moment that we have students. There is urgency because we have students that are in inequitable spaces, but at the same time, if these projects are coming in over, those funds are coming from, essentially our emergency fund. So in the event that in the next 4 years, we have unexpected funding changes at the state or federal level, that money is coming from that same pot. So at some point, if we are having overage on these buildings in the next 4 years, and we have changes, to title dollars or whatever else from a policy level, that is both draining the same pot of money, correct?
That is correct. So yes, when we got the $48 million hit, which, we've got the injunction from the courts now, and we've been able to submit some reimbursement. So it's not going to be that size of a hit, but still, it will still be a hit. And as we are looking through where to take the resources from, it is projects that are, finish, some of the funds, Murray Fairing, for example, some of the FF&E we looked at. I mean, I don't think we ended up taking any there, but this is where we have money we were always trying to put resources to help deal with this iceberg of a backlog that we can't. So there's money in there for elevators. Elevators are something we never get to. We get to the tip of the iceberg of boiler rooms and windows. We don't get to elevators. So when we have money at the end of the year, we put it away. And to your point, Commissioner Ames Messenger, then when you have an emergency that you didn't anticipate, that's what this is where it pays the price, is these kinds of projects.
Again, so just thank you. I know that has been the commitment of this administration to build that kind of security and that nest egg, and I really appreciate that fiscal responsibility to be able to walk in the board at this moment. But that is, and also appreciate the challenge of those decisions and that they all have costs. But that's helpful to keep in mind as we look through this. So thank you.
Any other questions on this item?
No question, but I will raise something that I believe Chief Collins Perkins raised that I think is important for us as a board, particularly in this committee, to be focused on, which is the board has to have a clear strategy on how we're going to move forward, understanding that we do not have the funds to sustain the amount of schools that we have in the current formation. So I think that there is some work for us to do along with staff, but this is something that's going to be a continuous issue. And to leave it out there without us diving into it and having a strategy of our own may be negligent. So wanted to raise that, as this is something that's going to continue to come up. We know where the landscape is for the next couple years, and we probably need to be preparing for that.
No, thank you. Thank you for that additional comment. And certainly, I think it does underscore that the board is deeply interested in understanding and engaging around this master plan, especially at this moment in time. And so I do think Dr. Judkins, considering, as I referenced alongside with Vice Chair Parker, how and in what ways the board as a whole can engage in that, knowing that there are many commissioners that likely would gladly find opportunity to dive deeper into some of this work, as well as like what we can do in a public session. But this presentation here is very helpful. And maybe I guess one last thing is, Dr. Judkins, when this presentation is posted and available in the recording, if we could just send a link out to the board just to flag this, as well as I can imagine the next item, right? We're very much in a theme here in these two topics, but I know that there are more of our colleagues that would like to dive into these. So with that, should we proceed to the next item, which is now our comprehensive education facilities master plan. So Maureen, you're not going anywhere, but thank you.
Yep. All right, so just a heads up, you will see some items that are duplicative between the major project review update and this, just because there is so much overlap. My name is Maureen Gershberg. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Strategy within the Operations Department for City Schools, and today we'll be going over the 2025 Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan that we refer to as the CEFMP. This aligns with Board Priority 3. The Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan is a required document from the state, or by the state. We submit it July 1st every year. And while it is a static document, it really captures a lot of the ongoing analysis and process that we do within operations and within planning. We're constantly collecting data, looking at trends, looking at demographic information. We are capturing that within the document, and then ultimately a lot of that data does help inform decisions made at the district level, such as the annual review. And then it's a cyclical process since we're constantly evaluating data. So after those decisions are made, we're looking at the impact, looking at what changed, what is needed. And so it's a constant process, with the CEFMP being that static documentation happening July 1st every year. These are the topics that we will be covering today. They cover the trends and issues that consistently impact facility planning. So great news, Baltimore City's population is potentially stabilizing. One-year change is in no way a guarantee of a reversing trend, but we are hopeful that at a minimum, the city population might stop declining. Baltimore City trends are often mirrored by our enrollment trends, and we definitely saw that this year with a gain of over 1,000 students. We actually gained 1.4% from the previous year. The biggest factors that have contributed to this trend reversal are the increasing Latino population and the significantly smaller Black losses. We were previously seeing Black student losses around, actually above 1,800 each year since 2015. And in this year, the Black student population only dropped by 474. This is one of my favorite maps since it helps demonstrate the inconsistent demographic patterns we have in Baltimore City. We'll get into district-wide data points later when we discuss utilization, but so often where we have excess seats is not where they are most needed. Baltimore City has had significant demographic changes since the 1960s, which is a very rough average of when most of our schools were built. This graph shows the historical inverse relationship between those Black losses and the Latino increases. And that was pretty consistent up until this year, where, as we mentioned previously, the Black losses started to plateau out a bit. It wasn't as dramatic a loss. Here's a map showing our Latino students. And as you might recognize, this map looks similar to some of the demographic patterns that we saw in the previous map and then what we'll see later on. This coincides with where a lot of those seats are needed. One of the state requirements for the CEFMP is 10-year enrollment projections. We were previously estimating losses of around 5,000 students. So while we can't say confidently that going forward, we're only going to gain students or we're going to plateau, we did decrease that loss from 5,000 to only 3,000 in the 10-year projections. It's our hope that the next few years will show stabilization or maybe even growth. And at that point, we would feel more confident about the projections either plateauing or increasing. We look at birth rates as part of the projections since they help inform kindergarten projections. The big takeaways on this are that people have been having less kids for years now. It's a nationwide trend. But this year, our enrollment went up. Common sense would say that when you have less births, your kindergarten cohort 5 years later would be decreased, but it didn't. We know our Latino students migrating into the city have had an even stronger effect than that decline in births. This graph shows Baltimore City births and the corresponding kindergarten enrollment 5 years later. For births, please note the plateau that happens next year, but then there's going to be a dip, and that was prime COVID years in there. And so we're going to be keeping our eye on the trend, and hopefully our Latino growth will continue to outweigh that decrease. Utilization, one of our favorite topics. Utilization is the enrollment in a building divided by the number of seats, which is the state rated capacity. An ideal utilization is around 86%. As I mentioned with the other presentation, there are state rules for capital improvement program funding. You're not allowed to apply for CIP funds for buildings that are less than 60%. This means we're less able to replace systems in underutilized buildings, and it can be harder for them to get approved for systemic projects. As part of the 21st Century Buildings Plan, City Schools made a utilization commitment to an 86% target in school year 1920. We met it, and that was great. And this year we are at 87%, but we are projected to increase because, as you recall, we're projecting about 3,000 less kids in the out years. Let's see. This chart shows the percentage of seats by grade band. Keep in mind that buildings come in all different sizes, so 41 elementary buildings take up much less square footage than 19 high schools. It's a lot to wrap your head around when we talk about building types and quantities and just like typical footprints. And then we'll get into just kind of like the regional impact that has as well. On the previous utilization slide a couple ago, I mentioned how 86% is the ideal utilization. It allows room for growth in the building while maintaining efficiency. But if you also recall, we have changing enrollment patterns across the city, and where we need seats is often not where we have them. This occurs at both grade bands and from a regional perspective. We're 87% district-wide, but if you kind of zoom in on the different grade bands here, you can see that we're all over the place. We are overcapacity, we are overutilized at the elementary middle level, but we have excess space at our secondary schools. This is showing that regional utilization at the elementary and elementary middle level. And similar to some of the other maps we've seen, we see a lot of overutilization in Southeast Baltimore, South Baltimore, where we're seeing that growing Latino population. And we see a lot less utilization in West Baltimore, where historically we've been hemorrhaging students. We have surplused over 2.7 million square feet since the beginning of the 21st Century Buildings Program. The map here shows the overall square footage of the facility. So the larger the dot, the bigger the facility. Determining the number of seats needed in a specific school zone or a geographic area in a choice district can be a little difficult. The K-5 out-of-zone rate for this school year is about 45%. If you break that down, about half of those out-of-zone kids are attending a charter or they're in specialized program, maybe they're homeless. But the other half of that 45%, they don't fall into any of those categories. They're just families exercising their right to choice. Our office works with the city to ensure we're aware of any developments that come online and could potentially bring more students to a specific school. In Baltimore, new developments rarely yield new students coming into the district. If they attract new families at all, they're likely being poached from other schools. The big developments high on our radar are Keys Point and Perkins Somerset Old Town. Keys Point is the next phase of an existing development owned by HABC, which is the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. There's already students who live in the phase 1 and they feed into the Hollibird zone. The new development is in the Graceland zone. So we're looking at that zone along with Hollibird and Rura for in conjunction with the Southeast building that the district has decided to retain instead of surplusing. So the Southeast building is in that area. Our team is going to be looking at the grades and how it could be serving the overcrowding area, that area of the city. So that's absolutely on our radar. And that's where Commodore John Rogers is currently swinging. They'll be vacating January 27. Perkins Somerset Old Town is the redevelopment associated with the new City Springs. We aren't as concerned about that project since it's a new school with additional seats. But we are monitoring the pace with which the students are moving back into the area compared to when the new building comes online. Other developments we're monitoring, but we anticipate to be less impactful are Lock Landing and Westport. The current maintenance and capital budget is approximately $375 million, less than what is needed for a district of our size. And as I shared with the previous presentation, that makes us have to make difficult decisions a lot. This is going to be even trickier going forward due to the decreased Healthy Schools facility funding. City Schools continues to make strides in providing more students with 21st century learning spaces. By 2030, almost half of the students in buildings owned by City Schools will be in new or renovated spaces. That being said, there will still be 87 buildings that are unrenovated or not replaced. A new addition to the CEFMP this year is the non-academic consolidation plan. The plan calls for the surplus of 4 non-academic facilities, and 3, and demolishing 2 of the buildings for surface parking. That will be an overall decrease of 400,000 square feet, which is equivalent to 2 Forest Park high schools. Please note that except for some minor movements at this point in time, the plan is on pause due to financial constraints caused by the loss of federal funding. But this is the long-term goal. And as always, if you want to know more about any of these topics or the CEFMP, you should check out our dashboard.
Questions for my fellow commissioners. And obviously, I know in some of what you're presenting here, we're very much the topic and the focus of some previous questions. So curious if there's additional follow-up. Commissioner Mohammed, I see you here.
Yeah, I'm always concerned when I hear about the reduction in West Baltimore. As we are seeing increases, I remain concerned about the effort and the strategy we're implementing to ensure we continue to retain the students that we do have, along with those that are coming in to the district that we are happy to have as well. And maybe this is a question, I think for the sake of time, that can be responded to in writing, but what is our strategy? What are we doing to retain the students that we're losing, particularly if we look into West Baltimore? And with that, at what point are we losing students? When I look at the data here, I see, and it comes off as if we're losing students at the middle school, area. But I'm not sure. So if you can give us some insight into when we're losing our students, that would be helpful as well. And again, for the sake of time, I'll just take that in writing.
Okay, we'll respond in writing.
Additional question? Yeah, Vice Chair Parker.
Not a question, just a comment to add on to Commissioner Mohammed as far as West Baltimore. Acknowledging the presentation and the point made that sometimes new developments do not yield new students. I wanted to lift that there's also a new project over in Reservoir Hill that is right by Dorothy I. Height Elementary School, which I know is a school that is underutilized. And to go back to Commissioner Mohammed's, and this probably is not operations, so I'll take a question and we can talk about it later. But I would also like to know the strategy around getting some of our newer families who need maybe, specialized programs. I'll say it that way. I believe that if we had more schools that had specialized programs. So what do I mean by specialized programs? Like the programs Ingenuity that's over at Mount Royal. What if we had a small version of that in more neighborhood-based schools? I believe we would be able to maybe attract some of the private school people or the families who are exercising choice, as we talked about it in this project. But my comment is, there are plenty of new developments that are coming up around the city. I would love to see a strategy, even if it's long-term, to enhance some of our programming to attract those families.
Yeah, thank you for that question, comment, and that can be captured and shared over, perhaps specifically with Chief Highcupboard, and thinking about some of the strategy around enrollment engagement. Commissioner Ames Messenger.
Hi, thank you. I think adding to the list of things to be followed up on later. I think also just looking when you at the nearly 50% of students that are going to not their local school. I think as we layer that on top of our documented transportation problems of just getting a sense of like what's their average distance, the flow of where students are living relative to where they're attending school, just as the board goes through these conversations in the next year would be helpful.
Yeah. And I don't know if Jacinta's on, but so if a kid is exercising choice and they're not part of any citywide programming or have any IEP requirements, we do not bus them if they're out of zone. But yeah.
But for kids that are in those situations, I think also just looking at that also dovetails into attendance issues and lots of other things. So I think just having a concept of where people are going, as parents make informed choices about what's best for their kids for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, no, certainly,
And then-
go for it. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say really quick, just for context, and Commissioner Ames Messenger, let me know if I'm incorrect. Commissioner Ames Messenger was not talking about us busing. We're just talking about transportation in general, because there's a transportation issue with families busing their kids, if that's taking them themselves or them using public transportation across the city, not so much the students that Baltimore City is directly responsible for. Is that correct, Ames Messenger?
It is. I think thinking about both too is interrelated problems because at some point, how are we using those limited transportation dollars in-house for, like, are we taking that kid to the special program that makes the most sense, based on whatever they're qualifying for, but then also looking at how can we maximize service to get kids to the best program in their fit. So I think looking at both and how do we make those align with the building and infrastructure and staff and expertise that we have.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chair Parker, for distinguishing that difference and for the question, Commissioner Ames Messenger. It certainly, is something I know that it comes up in the fall to Operations Committee, but, the city schools, in just like tremendous growth, improvements, ability to transport students and have all students routed, both with buses as well as with the vans, has been really a remarkable set of achievement, progress, and so many of our students do still face transportation issues with public transportation, and so us just understanding more of that, I think, is of very much of interest. I know Commissioner Esposito spoke on a panel recently, and there were some ideas and thoughts that came out from that broader conversation. So all of these are deeply intertwined, and this operations committee certainly has interest in this. I know other commissioners do as well, as we think about the overall structure that supports our student learning, and that's getting to school, that's having safe spaces, once you're there. It's all of these pieces that support that. But thank you for the presentations. Any final questions on this second presentation here?
I just have a comment for staff and for the committee. I've already talked to Chief Perkins Cohen and Chair Sally and Dr. Duckins. We are really working our hardest to send this information out as soon as possible to the full board. So I know time is tight, but if we all could make ourselves available for any questions or comments from the full board, that would be great, because as everyone knows, I hope everybody's counting down the days. This weekend is a holiday weekend. So I want people to be able to enjoy themselves, but also have the information needed for our next board meeting.
No, thank you for calling that out and just highlighting that as we're on this call, actually, I saw the email from last night that has the presentations to the full board. So thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for doing exactly as Vice Chair has asked, and appreciate that. And I do think any one of us, just underscoring it as we talk to other commissioners ahead of, next Tuesday, that this is something to dive into, right? For them to spend time ahead of time. I don't know how much we'll have on the agenda to be able to go deep in the public meeting, but thank you for all of the work that goes into this. And as you've highlighted, there are so many variables that have to be considered, accounted for, certain dollars that can only be spent certain ways, and you piecemeal it all together in such an impressive way. Thank you for making it all a stretch, and for the work also in creating dashboards and those things that highlight that. So with that, we have progressed beyond the presentations today. There are earlier sort of things were a little bit mixed up, but we have no compliance reports. So we just have those discussions today, and it's my understanding that we also do not have any public comments. Is that just verifying that is still the case, Dr. Jenkins?
That is still the case. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I guess before we proceed to procurement items, any items that commissioners would like to, that if there's any final questions on any of the things that we had presented here today, otherwise we'll move into procurement. Okay, so procurement, we have a few items on procurement today, and let me see who is presenting those. Catherine, good morning. How are you?
Hi, how are you? So my name is Catherine Kamenecki, and I am one of the contracts administrators here at City Schools, and I will be presenting the ops agenda. The first item we have is section 11.1. The board executive officer requests the approval of a competitively solicited contract with Alma Advisory Group. And this
One
is for-
quick, just quick note. Usually we have somebody sharing the screen just to like, as you're going through it, or is that normally what we do? Is Jonathan, I guess, usually share that? Just remind me, because I'm fine if you just go through them. I have them pulled up in front of me, but for people's ability to follow along.
I'm actually not sure what.
Katie, I can do it.
The board.
Katie, I can
officer
do it.
usually
I got
handles
you.
that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, Kathy, you shouldn't need to be doing that and juggling all the pieces, but okay, please proceed. Thank you.
Got it, right. So section 11.1, this is a request from the board office for the executive search committee for the new CEO. And the estimated total contract amount is $107,926. And the contract term is May 28th, 2025 through May 27th, 2027.
Any questions on this item? Okay, thank you.
Right, the next item is section 14.1, and this is a contract increase and extension. The Chief Information Technology Officer, along with the CFO and the CHO, requests the board's approval to extend the contract term and increase the estimated total contract amount with Application Software Technology, or AST, to provide ERP software and implementation services. The current contract term is extended through September 28th, 2028, and the board is requested to approve a contract extension through 2029, as well as increase the estimated total contract amount to $41,694,687.
Questions on this item?
Yes. So this is an increase of about 20 million. I think that with this, what first question would be, what safeguards are in place to prevent the ERP cost overruns? Because we're seeing increase consistently coming to us. So how do we ensure that the contract for the services meet the need that we're presenting to the board and it's remaining consistent?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Chief Tommy Jones. I apologize. I have virtually no voice this morning. So I'll have to keep my answer very, very brief, but I can respond in writing if necessary.
Chief Tommy, I'm gonna stop you because I definitely don't want to put you through any hardship. If you can respond in writing, that would be helpful. And let me also add, how are we ensuring just equity in the rollouts to schools, particularly those that were previously underfunded, and given the platform's age, what is the long-term plan for transitioning to a more modern IMS? But I will receive that in writing, and that serves my need, Chair Coy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and adding one additional sort of, as you respond back in writing, I see that this is, slated to come out of capital funds. I know when this work was started, it was coming from allocation of ESSER or COVID relief funds. If you could just include the sort of sourcing of the future funds, given how those funds have ended or are ending, that would be wonderful.
Will do. And I don't know, Courtney, did you want to add anything?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. I was talking to myself for a second. This was never funded from ESSER. It's always been funded from capital. So we've been putting aside funding and assigned fund balance over multiple years for the capital account for the ERP. And a little bit touching on part of your question, Commissioner Mohammed, this is for the new ERP system. So this is the one that, we just got up and running with finance phase 1 in 2024, so last year, and we're now getting ready to start the human capital portion. So we did start the process in 2021, but that was essentially going through the RFP process, building our requirements and all the rest of that. But first go live was, we just finished our first full year of that. So that's the new ERP, project.
Thank you for that additional context and for the correction on source of funds. Commissioner Haynes Messenger.
Thanks. It's just also, I guess, another act to include in that written response. Could we also include just kind of a Bruce option, or I guess maybe if there's someone on the line that could answer now, did we consider non-Oracle options as we were looking for this revision? And then also beyond that, well, I guess I'll do that and then put to the next thing. Because I saw your nod, Courtney.
Yes. So we did in the initial review, we did consider non-Oracle options. Oracle was 2 of the, I think, 6 options that we had available at the time. And, for a number of reasons, we ended up going with the Oracle Cloud solution as our final response. This is essentially a continuation of that work. It's not a restart. It's not a redo. AST is the implementer that we use for Oracle. So this cost includes both the cost for the implementer and the actual Oracle subscription cost that we're paying on an annual basis.
And why, and again, I know this is a very complex, long decision. Why was Oracle selected rather than one of the other 4 options?
We had a pretty extensive evaluation, but I think we can boil it down to a few things, some of which are related to the functionality within a K-12 system. Some of the other tools that we evaluated as ERPs were not as suitable for school level environment, and also part of the functions that we saw with Oracle with the ability to use decentralized locations, which suits our purpose, in addition to which we were going from an original Oracle product to begin with. Our old ERP system was an on-prem Oracle product, so it made it easier to transition some of the coding and information that we had in the existing Oracle product into the Oracle Cloud product that we were transitioning to.
Thank you. And then the second brief question is just if when it comes back, we would also see an updated timeline for the ERP rollout on capital or on the human capital side. That would be helpful.
Yeah, we can have that.
Thank you. Next item.
Section 14.2. The Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to participate in the Maryland Education Enterprise Consortium competitively solicited contract for audiovisual hardware and services. The estimated initial contract amount is $3.3 million. The contract term is May 28th, 2025 through February 29th, 2028, and includes 2 one-year renewal options.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Section 15, Chief Operating Officer. Section 15.1, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Janus Contractors, Inc. in the total amount of $1,008,126. And this contract is to provide window and exterior door replacement services at Marie G. Faring Pre-K to 8 school.
Questions? Thank you.
Section 15.2, The Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Autumn Contracting in the total amount of $4,939,910. And this contract provides window and door replacement services at Harbor City Building, number 413.
Questions? Thank you.
Section 15.3, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with E. Buchanan Construction Company, Inc. And the total amount of this contract is $3,184,920. And this contract is to provide window and door replacement services at Westport Academy.
Any questions on this one? Next.
Section 15.4, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Autumn Contracting, Inc. in the total contract amount of $1,563,980. And this contract is to provide roof replacement services at the Abbotston Building.
Any questions on this one? Next.
Section 15.5, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Clyde McHenry, Inc. in the total amount of $6,374,082. This contract provides window and door replacement services at Northern Building 402.
Any questions on this one? Thank you.
Section 15.6, this is a contract increase, and the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval to increase the contract with multiple vendors to provide fire alarm installation, inspection, and repair services. On an as-needed basis, the board is requested to increase the estimated annual contract amount from $1.5 million annually to $2.5 million annually. This is an annual increase of $1 million, and the contract term is October 9th, 2024 through December 31st, 2027.
Questions on this one?
Yeah, this is a steep rise. And I'm sure it's needed, and it's around safety, which is extremely important to me. Do we have any breakdown of long-term planning and preventative strategies to ensure that this does not remain a challenge?
Good afternoon, Lynette
Good morning.
Washington, the Chief Operating. Oh, it is this morning. So I don't know if one of my team members is actually on the call, so I'm going to attempt to respond to it. Can you repeat your question just so I understand and I can respond?
So it seems to be just a steep rise in the costs. So we're increasing costs. The need for this to ensure that it does not continue to increase, or we don't have this challenge come back to us. Is there any long-term planning or strategies to ensure that the fire alarm contracting does not jump in the way that we're seeing it right now?
Yeah. And so and I can definitely follow back up also in writing too, but some of the costs that we are experiencing is because we have increasing issues that are happening. And so the team is doing the future planning so that we're not in a situation where we do have an emergency and then the contract is not at the price point that we can actually address all of our emergencies coming. So we are seeing an uptick in some of these different emergencies. And so we're planning in advance based off of projections of what we're seeing right now. So it's not a cost increase just because, because it's not planning. It's a cost increase because we're planning for future things that are happening and what we're experiencing right now.
And Dr. Washington, if I could add, just to add, if you take a look at the contract, I think one of the issues we've had recently is that we're having to do some full system replacements of some of our buildings, where in some of the other reports, it was actually repairs. Because we've had to do some replacements, of course, that was a little bit of a steeper cost in that situation there. But we're also in the process of reevaluating, just to make sure that we do not have those kind of costs moving forward. But again, as she said, because we're having to look at some full system replacements, we've had some increases there, but we're reevaluating this as well. Appreciate the insight.
Commissioner Ames Messenger.
Thanks. Would it be possible to send back for these? And I'm looking specifically. Well, actually, let me hold the question. We'll finish up procurement and I'll come back.
Yeah, I'll circle back with you. Any other questions on this item? Next. Or is that the last one? No, I think we do have. Yeah, I was saying.
End of year. Section 15.7, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Chilmar Corporation in the total amount of $489,668. And this contract provides elevator replacement services at Margaret Brent.
Any questions? Commissioner Ames Messenger, is that your previous hand or you have a question on this one?
Section 15.8, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Chilmar Corporation in the total amount of $608,463, and this contract provides elevator replacement services at Sinclair Lane Elementary School.
Any questions on this one? I never did think when I joined the school board that I'd be approving so many elevator replacements, but I do think the past 2 years you all have been sort of real diligent on getting these things fixed. So Dr. Washington and team, I know how much of a pain those are when they aren't working and how problematic that is for students and teachers that have dependencies on elevators. So thank you for all that work. But I do notice this, like every operations committee, it seems almost that we have elevators and they're expensive.
Having gotten stuck in more than one Baltimore City Public Schools elevator and had been retrieved by the fire department once, teachers and students, thank you very much.
Oof.
Next.
Section 15.9, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with CNN Associates in the total amount of $2,175,334. This contract provides window door replacement services at Northeast Middle School.
Questions? Thank you.
And the final item is under the Achievement and Accountability Officer. Section 17.1, the Chief Academic and Accountability Officer requests the board's approval of a 1-year contract extension with NCS Pearson to provide SchoolNet. And the total amount for this year is $394,729. And the contract term is July 1, 2025 through June 30th of 2026.
Any questions on this one? Okay, thank you. Circling back, Commissioner Ames Messenger, you had a sort of, I guess, more global question.
Yeah, just looking forward and positive based on the earlier conversations today, and because the board is constantly cycling to build our knowledge and capacity, was wondering if it would be possible to start to include the number of students served by a building as well as their occupancy rate when procurement items come forward in the future. I think just for us to be able to connect those costs long term and for the public to be able to do the same would be helpful, at least for me.
No, that's a good question, and I do think different times over the past couple of years that I've been on the board, at least there have been sort of considerations about what is in the procurement letter and the information that's coming to us as a board. I do think that would likely benefit from Vice Chair Parker some work with the board for us to, I don't want us to provide kind of like one-off sort of changes to that,
Outcome.
right? Like let's, so I do think us engaging and saying, how do we want some of these adjustments, like you've outlined as suggested here, or others to that letter. So let's spend some time, I guess, Dr. Judkins, thinking about where and how that could fit in, and Vice Chair Parker, sort of your thoughts on where we as a board could then reflect back and give the staff time to comment as well on any proposed changes. I do want to make sure that we are being really thoughtful about that, knowing how much every single line in those procurement letters sort of requires from staff to answer, or if it's not applicable, to sort of say why it's not applicable.
I think specifically looking at this, looking at Sinclair, looking at Westport, looking at long-term investments in buildings that have student numbers posted. So, and if that shows up in a different context, but I think like, how do we build time and knowledge and conversation within the board in a way that's data-based? Because I know that these are conversations that cause a lot of energy and anxiety for staff. So that makes perfect sense, Coy.
Yeah, no, well, and certainly I know some of the previous conversations have also been like, when we're purchasing education materials, it's for how many students, and what's the cost per, like, there's a variation on that question that I've heard multiple times, and so I am certainly interested in it, and I just want us to be sort of organized as a board to say what we're looking for in the document, because of the sort of burden that changes in that require the staff to make. Any additional thought? But I think it's a great sort of global question, and I know I've heard a similar sort of inquiry, Commissioner or Vice Chair Parker, from you on like how we are thinking about the procurement sort of process and tracking and following items through, and also just reflecting on the difference between pre-approvals and expenditures. Oftentimes we are approving an up to amount that doesn't, and even that came up a little bit in today, right? It may not be the actual cost, but it is when the cost is needed, as is what was presented earlier on the fire and security systems. At that point, knowing how long a procurement requires, it is prudent to have a pre-approval, but that is, I think that distinguishing factor is sometimes lost in the presentation of it currently. I know myself as a commissioner, it's sort of like I have to think, is this a pre-approval? Is this an actual amount that we're spending? It's also part of like the school-based decision-making where we're authorizing an amount, but schools then have to decide to spend that amount. So I feel like there are ways that we could continue to refine and help support, especially as new commissioners come on, to your point, and ground it in student experience. So much of what we do needs to be grounded in the student learning and why we're doing what we're doing. But thank you for that question. Any unreadiness before we conclude? Well, thank you, everyone. Our next Operations Committee meeting is scheduled for June 17th at the same time, 10:30 a.m. And that will actually be our last Operations Committee on the schedule for the year. It's also like right on the last day of the school year. So we will see you all then for some items. But thank you, everyone, for joining today and for the discussion around our comprehensive master plan.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good day,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the work.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.